Some football stories begin under bright lights, in famous academies, with cameras already waiting, with scouts in the stands, and the world ready to call a young player the next big thing. But Eldor Shomurodov's story did not begin like that. His story began far away from Europe, far away from the biggest football cities, far away from the noise. It began in Uzbekistan, in the south of the country, in Jarqo, a place where the dream of playing at the World Cup once felt almost impossible, not just for one boy, but for an entire nation. And that is why Eldor's story matters, because he did not just become a footballer. He became a bridge between the old Uzbekistan, the team that always came close, and the new Uzbekistan, the team that finally made it. Eldor Shomurodov was born on June 29, 1995. At that time, Uzbekistan was still trying to find its football identity. The country had talent, it had passion, it had players who could compete, but on the world stage, Uzbekistan was still waiting, still hoping, still trying to prove that it belonged. And in Jarqo, a young boy was growing up inside a family where football was already part of life. His father played football, his brother played football, his uncles played football. Two of those uncles even represented Uzbekistan. So for Eldor, football was not something he discovered by accident. It was already around him, in the family, in the conversations, in the streets, in the way people looked at the ball. And when he was still a child, he started playing at around 6 years old. The ball became part of his daily life, not because he knew exactly where it would take him. No child really knows that, but because football gave him something, a feeling, a direction, a dream that slowly started to grow. At around 11 years old, Eldor joined the academy of Mashal Mubarak, and this was the first serious chapter of his journey. This was not the kind of academy the world talks about every day. It was not Barcelona's La Masia. It was not Sporting Lisbon. It was not Manchester United. But for Eldor, it was the beginning of structure, training, coaching, competition, the first place where talent had to become discipline, because a young player can love football. But professional football does not care about love alone. It demands repetition. It demands sacrifice. It demands pain. You have to train when you are tired. You have to listen when you think you already know. You have to lose the ball and ask for it again. You have to miss chances and still believe the next one will go in. And for a young striker, that is one of the hardest lessons, because strikers are judged by the simplest thing in football. Did you score or did you not? At Mashal, Eldor began learning what it meant to be a real forward. He was tall, he had a strong body, he had movement, but being tall is not enough. A tall striker can be slow, a strong striker can be predictable. A player with good instincts can still disappear in a match if he does not understand timing. So Eldor had to learn how to hold the ball with his back to goal, how to protect it when a defender is pushing into him, how to run into space without going too early, how to attack a cross, how to drag defenders away, how to make the game easier for teammates. Because the striker's job is not only to score. Sometimes the striker's job is to suffer, to fight, to take the heat, to receive a difficult ball, keep it, and give the team a few seconds to breathe. These are not the moments that make highlight reels, but they are the moments that make a player trusted. In 2014, Eldor made his senior debut for Mashal. He was still young, still raw, still far away from the player he would become. And his rise did not happen overnight. There was no instant explosion, no sudden miracle, just the slow process of becoming ready. He played, he learned, he adjusted. Senior football was different. The defenders were stronger. The pressure was heavier. The matches were more tactical, and every mistake mattered more. For a young striker, this is the dangerous stage, because if the goals do not come quickly, the mind can start asking questions. Am I ready? Am I good enough? Can I really go further than this? But Eldor kept going, and 1 year later, a bigger opportunity came. Bunyodkor. Bunyodkor was a different world, a bigger club, a bigger name, a bigger expectation. For Eldor, it was the first sign that his career was moving beyond the quiet beginning. At Bunyodkor, he became more visible, his movement sharpened, his confidence grew, his body became more useful, and the goals started to arrive. Over his time there, he scored important goals and began to look like one of Uzbekistan's most interesting young attackers. But more than the numbers, it was the profile that mattered. He was not only a penalty box striker, he could run, he could link play, he could drift wide, he could attack the box, he could hold the ball, he could do pieces of many different jobs. And when a forward can do that, bigger leagues begin to look at him differently. They do not only see a striker, they see a tool, a solution, a player who can help in more than one type of match. And in 2017, that next step arrived. Russia, Rostov. For Eldor, moving to Russia was not just a transfer, it was a test of whether his football could survive outside Uzbekistan, because it is one thing to be talented at home, it is another thing to move abroad, into a stronger league, a colder country, a more physical game, and still prove yourself. At Rostov, the defenders were stronger, the duels were harder, the space disappeared faster, the weather was harsher, the pressure was different. Nobody cared what he had done before. He had to earn everything again. At first, it was not easy. He needed time. Time to understand the league. Time to understand his teammates. Time to understand how to use his body against defenders who were just as strong as him. But this is where Eldor began to change. Russia made him tougher. It made him more patient. It taught him how to fight when the game was ugly. And slowly, the striker from Uzbekistan began to grow. Then came the 2019 to 2020 season, the season where everything clicked. Eldor scored 11 league goals for Rostov, and suddenly, his name was not only being spoken in Uzbekistan, people outside were watching, scouts were watching, clubs were paying attention, because now there was proof, not just talent, not just promise, production. He was scoring in a stronger league. He was affecting matches. He was becoming dangerous. And when you watched him during that period, you could see why. He could make long runs behind defenders. He could drift to the left side, receive the ball, and carry the attack forward. He could fight for long passes. He could combine with midfielders. He could attack the box late. He was tall, but not frozen, strong, but not static. And that combination made him interesting, not only to Russia, but to Italy. Serie A is not kind to strikers. It is a league where defenders study your movements. They do not just chase you, they read you. They pull you into uncomfortable areas. They close angles before the pass even arrives. In some leagues, a striker can survive with speed or strength. In Italy, he needs details. And in 2020, Genoa brought Eldor Shomurodov into that world. For Uzbekistan, this was a historic moment. One of their players was now in Serie A. One of their own had entered a league that had seen legends, defenders, tacticians, world champions. And for Eldor, it was the biggest classroom of his life. His first goal came against Parma. Genoa lost the match, but the goal changed something, because Eldor became the first Uzbek player to score in Serie A. Picture it. Genoa are chasing the game. The match is tense. The ball arrives in a dangerous area. The defenders are close enough to block him. The goalkeeper is set. There is no time to admire the moment. In Serie A, if you wait, the chance dies. Eldor adjusts his body, takes the moment quickly, and finishes. The ball hits the net. For Genoa, it was only one goal in a defeat. But for Eldor and for Uzbekistan, it was history. A first goal in Serie A, a first reminder that a player from Jarqo could stand inside one of Europe's hardest leagues and score. Sometimes, a goal is not only about the scoreline, sometimes it tells a player you belong. That season at Genoa became the season that opened the next door. He scored 8 league goals, and for a first year in Italy, at a club that was often fighting difficult matches, that was enough to make a statement. One of his strongest performances came against Atalanta. Atalanta were not an easy opponent. They pressed, they attacked, they moved with intensity. They could turn a match into chaos. And in that chaos, Eldor scored twice. Genoa lost 4-3, but Eldor's performance stayed in the memory because scoring twice against that kind of opponent showed something. He was not only there to survive, he could hurt top teams. He could find space in hard matches. He could make Serie A defenders suffer. And after that season, Roma came. Roma, a city of pressure, a club of emotion, a fan base that loves deeply and demands even more. And now, Jose Mourinho was there, a manager who had built his career on winning, on pressure, on mentality, on players who could suffer for the team. Roma signed Eldor in 2021. The fee was reported around 17.5 million euros plus bonuses. For a player from Uzbekistan, this was a massive step, a historic step, a beautiful step, but also a dangerous one. Because when you move to a club like Roma, your story changes immediately. At Genoa, people are impressed when you score. At Roma, people expect you to deliver. Every week, every touch matters. Every missed chance becomes a question. Every substitution becomes a debate. The beginning felt like a dream. Mourinho's first competitive match as Roma coach, away to Trabzonspor, a European night, a difficult stadium, a tense match. The score was level. Roma needed something. And then, Eldor found the moment. The ball came into the box. There was movement, pressure, bodies around him. And like every striker must do, he reacted before everyone else. He scored. Roma won 2-1, a winning goal in Europe for Mourinho's Roma. It felt like the perfect beginning. A new signing, a new coach, a new story, and Eldor's name was right in the middle of it. But football can be cruel. A perfect beginning does not always become a perfect journey. At Roma, Eldor never truly became the main man. He had moments, he worked hard, he contributed, but the rhythm was difficult. And for a striker, rhythm is everything. You can train every day, you can be professional, you can understand the tactics, but if the minutes are not consistent, the instincts can become colder. A chance that normally feels natural suddenly feels rushed. A run that normally comes without thinking suddenly comes half a second late. And at a club like Roma, half a second can be the difference between being praised and being forgotten. He was good enough to belong, but not always central enough to shine. And that is one of the most painful places a footballer can live. Inside the dream, but not fully free inside it. Still, that Roma chapter gave him something historic. In 2022, Roma won the UEFA Europa Conference League. Eldor was part of that squad. He was not the main face of the final. He was not the biggest name, but he was there. A player from Uzbekistan, a boy from Jarqo, inside a European trophy-winning team. That matters, because for some countries, one player reaching a stage like that changes imagination. It tells the next generation that Europe is not a fantasy. It is not a place only other nations reach. It is possible, difficult, but possible. And Eldor had shown the road. Then came the harder chapters. Spezia, Cagliari, back to Roma, then Turkey, Istanbul Başakşehir. To some people, this looks like the story slowed down, maybe even went backward. But football is not that simple. A career is not only about the highest club you reach. It is also about what you do after the highest moment does not become permanent. Can you keep going? Can you accept a new role? Can you fight for minutes again? Can you rebuild confidence? Can you keep yourself ready? Eldor had to do all of that. Because while club football gave him uncertainty, the national team gave him purpose. With Uzbekistan, he was not a squad option. He was not a player trying to convince everyone he mattered. With Uzbekistan, he was the captain, the record scorer, the face. His international journey had started long before Roma. In 2015, he played at the FIFA Under-20 World Cup. Uzbekistan reached the quarterfinals, and Eldor was part of the generation showing that the country had real talent coming. Later that year, he made his senior debut against Yemen, a World Cup qualifier. Uzbekistan won 1-0. It was not the kind of debut that fills documentaries with fireworks, but sometimes the biggest stories begin quietly. One match, one shirt, one first step. Soon after, he scored his first senior international goal against Bahrain. And from there, the goals kept coming, slowly, year by year. He became more than a forward. He became Uzbekistan's attacking reference. The 2019 Asian Cup was the first time Asia really saw it. Uzbekistan faced Oman. The match was level late. The tension was growing. The kind of match where one moment can shape an entire tournament. Then Eldor came on. Fresh legs, sharp mind, a striker waiting for the one chance. The ball was played forward. Oman's defensive line was not completely open, but it was stretched. And a stretched defense is enough for a forward who reads the game quickly. Eldor made the run. The pass arrived. He entered the box. The goalkeeper tried to close him down. A defender chased. The angle was not huge, but Eldor did not panic. He finished. Uzbekistan 2. Oman 1. A late winner. That is how strikers earn trust. Not with speeches, with moments. Then came Turkmenistan. Eldor scored twice, a brace. Uzbekistan won 4-0. Then came Japan, a stronger opponent, one of Asia's best teams. Against Japan, Eldor scored again. He found space, received the ball in a dangerous area, and finished with composure. Japan eventually came back to win, but Eldor had shown he could score against elite Asian opposition. By the end of the tournament, he had 4 goals at an Asian Cup. And for Uzbekistan, that was a sign. They had a striker who could carry big moments, not just in friendlies, not just in easy matches, but on the continental stage. In 2023, another milestone came. Against Turkmenistan, in the FIFA Nations Cup, Eldor scored twice, and with those goals, he broke the national scoring record. For years, Maxim Shatskikh had been the name at the top, the symbol, the standard, the record. And now, Eldor had passed him. He had become Uzbekistan's all-time leading scorer. That is not just a stat, that is history. Because when a player becomes his country's top scorer, his name stops being only current, it becomes permanent. Every future striker will be compared to him. Every big goal will be measured against him. Eldor had entered that place, but there was still one achievement bigger than any personal record. The World Cup. For Uzbekistan, the World Cup had been a dream full of pain. They had been close before. So close that the word almost became part of their football identity. Almost there, almost qualified, almost historic, but almost gives you nothing. No anthem on the world stage, no flag in the group draw, no children watching their country at the biggest tournament, no moment where the world finally says, Uzbekistan are here. For decades, that dream stayed just out of reach, and every new qualification campaign carried the ghosts of the old ones, the missed chances, the failed nights, the points dropped, the years gone, and then came the road to 2026. This time, Uzbekistan had a team, a real team, young talent, experienced leaders, a stronger structure, and at the front of it, Eldor Shomurodov. The third round of qualifying began in 2024. Uzbekistan opened with a 1-0 win against North Korea. Not a glamorous match, but an important one, because qualification is not built only on beautiful football. It is built on results, on discipline, on clean sheets, on taking 3 points when the world is not watching. Then came Kyrgyzstan away. And this was different. This was chaos. Kyrgyzstan scored first. The stadium erupted. Suddenly, Uzbekistan were behind. And in moments like that, a team can start to shake. But only 2 minutes later, Eldor answered. The captain scored. A fast equalizer, a calming goal, a goal that told his teammates, breathe, we are still here. The match kept twisting. Kyrgyzstan scored again, Uzbekistan equalized again, then Oston Uranov scored the winner. Uzbekistan won 3-2. It was not clean. It was not comfortable. But World Cup qualification is not about comfort. It is about survival. And that night, Uzbekistan survived. Then came Iran, a 0-0 draw against one of Asia's heavyweights, a match of concentration, discipline, structure, the kind of match where a striker may not get many chances, but still has to work, still has to press, still has to hold the ball, still has to give the team a way out. Because in games like that, the striker is not only a scorer, he is a pressure valve. Then came the UAE, a direct rival. The match was tense, long, careful. The score stayed 0-0 deep into the second half. And then, Uzbekistan got a penalty. Otabek Shukurov stepped up. In a qualifier, a penalty is not just a shot. It is a country holding its breath. He scored. Uzbekistan won 1-0. And the dream became louder. But football always tests belief before it rewards it. In January 2025, Uzbekistan lost their coach. Srečko Katanek stepped down because of health issues. That could have broken everything. A coaching change in the middle of a World Cup campaign can create confusion, doubt, instability. But Uzbekistan did not collapse. Timur Kapadze came in, and the team kept moving. In March, they beat Kyrgyzstan 1-0, then went to Tehran to face Iran, one of the hardest away matches in Asia. Uzbekistan went ahead. Iran equalized. Uzbekistan went ahead again. Iran equalized late, 2-2. For Iran, it was enough to qualify. For Uzbekistan, it was proof. Proof they could go into a difficult stadium against a World Cup regular and not break. That result set up the biggest night. June 5th, 2025. United Arab Emirates against Uzbekistan. 1 point was enough. 1 point for history. The match was not beautiful, but it was heavy. Every pass had weight. Every tackle had meaning. Every clearance sounded like relief. The UAE pushed. Uzbekistan defended, and the clock became the biggest opponent. In the second half, the pressure grew. Utkir Yusupov made important saves. The defenders cleared crosses. The midfielders fought for loose balls. And Eldor, the captain, had to play one of the strangest matches a striker can play. A match where the most important thing was not scoring. It was control. Hold the ball. Win the foul. Press the defender. Chase the long pass. Delay the next attack. Take the pressure off your teammates. Sometimes a captain leads by scoring. Sometimes he leads by helping everyone survive. The final minutes felt endless. The UAE attacked again. Uzbekistan cleared. Another ball came forward. Another duel. Another second survived. Then the whistle. 0-0. No goals. But history. Uzbekistan had qualified for the FIFA World Cup for the first time ever. The first Central Asian nation to reach the World Cup. After decades of trying, after generations of almost, Uzbekistan had finally arrived, and Eldor Shomurodov, the boy from Jarqo, the academy player from Mashal, the striker who went through Bunyodkor, Rostov, Genoa, Roma, loans, injuries, and criticism, was the captain. That is what makes this story powerful. Not that everything went perfectly, but that it did not. Eldor did not have a perfect career. He did not become a superstar at Roma. He did not avoid difficult seasons. He did not always play every week, but he kept going. And when Uzbekistan needed a leader, he was still there. 5 days after qualification, Uzbekistan played Qatar in Tashkent. This time, the pressure was gone. The ticket was already secured. The dream was real. The stadium could celebrate. Turgunboyev scored first. Then, in the 86th minute, Eldor scored, the captain, the record scorer, the symbol. It was not the goal that qualified Uzbekistan, but it felt like the story needed it. A signature, a final stamp, a reminder that the man who had carried so much of the journey would still have his moment in front of the people. Uzbekistan won 3-0, and the road to the World Cup felt complete. By 2026, Uzbekistan were preparing for their first World Cup. Colombia, Portugal, DR Congo. 3 difficult opponents, 3 different challenges. Uzbekistan would not arrive as favorites. They would arrive as debutants, as underdogs, as the team many people outside Asia still did not fully know. But that is exactly why their story matters. Because football is not only about the giants, it is also about the nations who waited, the players who carried impossible dreams, the captains who stood in front of history and refused to blink. For Uzbekistan, Eldor Shomurodov is one of those players. He is not the most famous striker at the World Cup. He is not the richest football story. He is not the polished superstar every casual fan already knows. But he is something more meaningful for his country. He is the boy who left Jarqo, the forward who reached Europe, the first Uzbek Serie A scorer, the Roma European trophy winner, the national team record scorer, the captain of the first Uzbek team to reach the World Cup. And maybe that is the real beauty of football. Not every hero belongs to the whole world. Some heroes belong to one nation so deeply that their story means more than fame ever could. When Eldor stands for the anthem at the World Cup, look closely, because that moment will not only be about one man, it will be about the academy fields, the early mornings, the Russian winters, the Italian pressure, the Roma doubts, the injuries, the missed tournaments, the record-breaking goals, the 0-0 in Abu Dhabi, the final whistle, the first World Cup. It will be about every Uzbek fan who waited, every child who dreamed, every old heartbreak that finally turned into pride. Eldor Shomurodov did not just chase the World Cup, he helped carry Uzbekistan there, and now, after decades of almost, Uzbekistan can finally say, "We are here."